Welcome to Celeb Club. All your favorites are here.
There are moments in life that change everything in a single breath. Moments that turn admiration into questions and silence into shock. Blake Lively, the shining star loved by millions for her talent and kindness, now stands in the middle of such a moment. In a courtroom filled with heavy air and unspoken tension, a single slip, a single revelation has shaken the very image her fans have held for years. The world that once saw only her smile now wonders about the tears she hides. The legal shocker that emerged is not just about law and justice, it is about humanity, about how even the brightest stars can stumble, and how one truth can echo louder than 1,000 praises. This is the story that stunned the fans and left the world holding its breath. Blake Lively was not just another Hollywood actress. She was a dream for millions, a young woman who rose from a simple life into the shining lights of fame. Her journey felt almost like a fairy tale. She became the face of elegance and the voice of hope for fans who followed her every move. People saw in her a reflection of something pure. They admired the way she carried herself with grace through the chaos of Hollywood. They loved her ability to smile, even when the world seemed heavy. Her marriage, her family, her roles on screen, everything seemed so perfect that it was hard to imagine any shadow behind the glow. But life is never as flawless as it appears. Even the brightest stars hide their storms. And for Blake, the storm came quietly. It came in whispers of legal disputes. It came in questions that were never fully answered. And finally, it came in the form of a courtroom moment that no one could have predicted. Inside that courtroom, there was no red carpet. There were no flashing cameras cheering her on. There was only silence, documents, lawyers, and the truth that waited to be spoken. For fans, the idea of Blake in such a setting felt unreal. How could their beloved star be facing such a heavy battle? What could possibly have gone so wrong? The shocking slip that would soon follow was not just a legal detail. It was a crack in the perfect image the world had built around her. It was proof that behind the glamour, there was a human being, a woman under pressure, a woman vulnerable, a woman who could stumble just like anyone else. And that is why this story matters so much, because it is not only about Blake Lively, the celebrity, it is about how even the most admired people carry struggles we may never see until one moment changes everything. Every storm begins with a small cloud. At first, the world around Blake Lively was calm. Her fans saw only the glamorous life they had always admired. They saw her walking into premieres, smiling at interviews, enjoying the family life she often spoke about. But behind the curtain, things were shifting quietly. Whispers started in the industry. At first, they seemed small, insignificant pieces of gossip, something that would fade like so many Hollywood rumors. But these whispers did not fade. They grew stronger and they grew louder. Soon they turned into questions about contracts, projects, and choices that carried legal weight. For Blake, this was the start of a long path she never imagined walking. Legal disputes have a way of pulling apart even the strongest of stars. They're not only about paperwork and lawyers. They're about reputation, trust, and the battle for truth. And when a beloved figure like Blake Lively is drawn into such a storm, the world pays attention. The courtroom became the stage, but not the kind of stage Blake was used to. There were no bright lights of a movie set, no cheering fans waiting outside. Instead, there were documents stacked high. There were sharp questions asked with precision. There were rules and judgments that could not be softened by charm or beauty. This was the place where image meant nothing, where every word spoken could shift the balance of the case, where even a single slip could change the direction of the entire case. And as Blake entered this world, the tension grew. The fans who had adored her for years began to feel the weight of uncertainty. Some defended her with passion, saying she was a victim of unfair treatment. Others questioned her decisions, wondering if the truth was different than what they believed. It was the beginning of a journey that would test her, not only as a celebrity, but as a person. The spotlight that once felt warm now turned harsh. The admiration that once lifted her now carried doubt. The legal battle was not just a challenge to her career, it was a challenge to her identity and the image she had built for years. This was the start of a storm that no one could stop, and soon a moment would arrive inside that courtroom. A moment so shocking that it would change how millions looked at Blake Lively forever. The courtroom was quiet, but heavy with unspoken tension. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The shuffle of papers, the scratch of pens, the low voices of attorneys preparing their questions. It was not the glamorous world Blake was used to. It was a room where every detail mattered, every word was recorded, and every pause carried weight. Blake sat at the table, her posture strong, her face calm, but inside she knew the stakes were high. This was not a film set where mistakes could be cut and retaken. This was real life. Every answer she gave could decide her future. Every slip could be used against her. The lawyers leaned forward with sharp eyes. Their questions were precise, cutting through layers of silence. They were not looking for stories or charm. They were looking for cracks. They wanted a moment where the truth might slip out or where a single word could change everything. For a while, Blake held steady. Her answers were careful, her tone controlled. She seemed like the picture of composure. But pressure is a strange thing. It builds slowly like water behind a dam until one moment when it cannot be held back anymore. And then it happened. A question that seemed simple, a detail that seemed small, yet the way she answered it changed the air in the room. Her words slipped past her before she could catch them, and in that instant the attorney seized on it. The moment was written down, the shock was clear. For Blake, it was like watching her carefully build walls collapse. For the fans who would later hear of it, the reaction was disbelief. They asked, how could she have said that? What did it mean? Was it a mistake or was it a hidden truth finally spoken? The deposition room had no applause, no sympathy. It was a place of judgment. And Blake had given her opponents the very thing they were waiting for, a slip. A single revelation that turned her legal battle into a storm the world could not ignore. For those watching her journey from the outside, it was heartbreaking. They had seen her as untouchable, flawless, a figure of strength. Yet in that moment, they saw her humanity. They saw her stumble in the very place she needed to stand strongest, and that made the shocker all the more powerful. This was the turning point, the moment that took the whispers and turned them into headlines, the moment that stunned her fans and gave fuel to those who doubted her. It was the moment that changed the entire direction of her case. News travels fast in Hollywood, but scandals travel even faster. The moment Blake's words slipped in that courtroom, as if the silence of the deposition was shattered and carried into every corner of the entertainment world. Within hours, whispers turned into breaking news alerts. Within days, it was everywhere. Headlines painted the moment in bold letters. Blake Lively's legal shocker stuns fans. Reporters rushed to add their spin. Some framed her as a victim caught in a trap. Others suggested she had finally revealed a hidden truth. The story was no longer just a legal detail. It was entertainment. It was drama. It was something the world could not stop talking about. Social media erupted. Fans flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with disbelief. Some wrote messages of heartbreak, saying they couldn't believe their beloved star was facing such a storm. Others defended her fiercely, insisting that she was human and deserved compassion. But there were also critics, those who used this moment to cast doubt on her image. They asked hard questions, they turned speculation into judgment. It was a storm unlike any red carpet moment, unlike any movie premiere, unlike any performance she had ever given. Because this time, she wasn't acting, she was living it, and millions were watching every second unfold. For Blake, the hardest part was not just the headlines, it was the feeling of being misunderstood. The same fans who once celebrated her now seemed divided. Some stood by her with love. Others watched with suspicion. The weight of their eyes was heavy and inescapable. The media frenzy was relentless. Morning shows dissected her words. Talk shows turned her slip into punchlines. Gossip columns speculated about what it meant for her marriage, her family, her roles on screen. Every angle was explored, every rumor magnified, until the truth itself felt lost. And through it all, one thing was clear. The image of Blake Lively, the flawless star, was gone. In its place stood a woman under fire, a woman whose humanity was exposed in front of the entire world. For her supporters, this was a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest stars can falter. For her critics, it was proof of what they had always suspected. But for everyone, it was unforgettable. The legal slip had become more than just a mistake. It had become a moment in celebrity history, a moment no one could ignore. Courtrooms are not built for sympathy. They are built for precision, for evidence, for rules that cannot be bent. No matter how loved or admired a person may be, the law does not look at red carpets or movie posters. It looks at words. It looks at truth. It looks at mistakes. And in Blake Lively's case, that one slip of words became more than just a headline. For years, Blake Lively has been more than an actress. She has been a symbol of elegance and success, a figure who balanced Hollywood fame with family life in a way that inspired many. Her image was polished, her career steady, her public reputation untouchable. But the courtroom slip changed that. It did not erase her talent, it did not undo her achievements, yet it created a shadow, one that could follow her into every new project she takes on. Hollywood is a place that thrives on perception. Casting directors, producers, and studios pay attention not only to performance, but also to public image. A single controversy can make the difference between being the first choice for a role and being quietly passed over. For Blake, the question became clear. Would the industry see her as the same shining star, or would they hesitate, wondering if the public drama was too heavy a burden to bring to their projects? The reaction so far has been mixed. Some insiders believe that her career will survive this storm, arguing that she is too talented and too beloved to be held back by a single mistake. Others, however, whisper that studios may think twice about investing millions in a project when headlines are filled with courtroom battles rather than box office numbers. Endorsements also hang in the balance. Companies that partner with celebrities look for stability and positivity. They want stars who represent confidence and trust. Blake has long been a favorite for fashion campaigns and lifestyle brands, but brands are cautious. They measure risk. And right now, her name carries not only admiration, but also controversy. Yet, it is important to remember, Hollywood also loves a redemption story. Stars have stumbled before and risen stronger than ever. Robert Downey Jr. went from being a troubled actor to one of the most bankable stars in the world. Britney Spears found compassion and renewed support after years of harsh judgment. If Blake chooses resilience, if she faces the storm with honesty and strength, her career could recover and even grow. For her fans, the answer already feels clear. They continue to support her. They trend hashtags in her defense. They flood her social media with words of encouragement. In their eyes, one slip cannot erase years of hard work, kindness, and grace. Their loyalty could become her strongest weapon in rebuilding what the storm tried to break. In the end, what this means for Blake's career depends on how she moves forward. The slip was a shock, the storm was overwhelming, but the future is not yet written. Will she rise from this as a stronger, more human star? Or will the shadow linger longer than she expects? The answer lies not in the courtroom anymore, but in how she tells her story from here. The story of Blake Lively's legal shocker is more than a headline. It is more than a courtroom slip. It is a reminder of what it means to be human in a world that rarely forgives mistakes. Blake is a star, loved for her beauty, her talent, and her strength. But this moment showed something deeper. It showed her vulnerability. It showed her humanity. And that is why it struck so powerfully. For fans, it was painful to watch. For critics, it was fuel for judgment. For the media, it was entertainment. But for Blake, it was real life. It was the weight of words that could not be taken back. It was the sound of headlines that would not fade away. And yet, within that storm, there was also something else. there was resilience. There was the quiet possibility of growth and redemption. Every celebrity who faces such storms stands at a crossroads. Some fall apart under the pressure, others find a way to rise stronger than before. The question now is which path Blake will choose. Her journey is not finished. Her story is still unfolding, and the world will